Oops, turn it on helps. And 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, there's about an 8-second delay between when I talk and when I see it. So, good evening, Glue Troopers. Hope everyone is relaxed and ready to chat. Okay. Someone give me a quick thumbs up if you guys can hear me okay. Okay, great. Audio is working. We are operational. As usual, I have my very sophisticated script here in front of me. And I threw this, cobbled this together at the last second. And all kinds of cool stuff to talk about. There's a possibility my brother might call. He called me when I posted the little advertisement for this a few hours ago. Are you live? Am I on the air? I'm like, no. Call back at 8 o'clock your time. Well, it's great to see the gang's all here. And did manage to come up with a couple of cool things to talk about. At least I think so. Cobbled a few things together. So, well, in no particular order, you can see on the desk cam here, I have my Major Matt Mason and Sergeant Storm in their, oops, don't drop your helmet, in your moon buggy. And there's a little story behind these guys I thought I would talk about. And my brother had to pay $25 just for one of the helmets. And somehow ended up with a third one. And when he got these for me, gosh, 15 years ago or better, 10 or 15 years ago, you see, I played with these as a kid. And I don't know if you guys know this, but one of the reasons that the models and toys of that era were so accurate is because they used a lot of the stuff that was printed in Collier's magazine. Collier's followed the space program very closely. Whereas, I forget, it was Life, I think it was Life magazine, like to follow the astronauts and paid them all that money for their story. Collier's actually followed the technical end of things. I believe they did a lot of those Chesley Bonstell paintings that are so famous. A lot of Von Braun stuff. Well, this is not green tea. So, the suits, when Mattel decided to make the toy, Ruth and Elliot Handler, who were running Mattel, this was just before they picked up Monogram Models, I might add, just a few years before. Well, they loved play value and everything, but Elliot, who was more the guy that selected the toys, Ruth was more of the, I think, the business end of things. And, of course, she's famous for having invented the Barbie doll. And they came up with this, and apparently they just looked in Collier's magazine and said hey, let's just make something that looks like what's in the magazine. That's what they did. Now, sorry, you're asking who owns the rights to major property. I think it's still Mattel. I do know this. I think I've bored you guys with this story once before, but real quick, I'll tap on it again. Having grown up, this is like my favorite non-model toy was the Major Matt Mason. And I was in the 4th grade, so I was 9, 10 years old. I mean, that's all I wanted for my birthday. And the, gosh, would be about 13 years ago, I thought, hey, that would make a great idea for a movie. Write a script using that character because it's a known property. I already had the in my mind, I already had the poster made. It was going to be basically a close-up of Mason, like a trunk shot from the waist up, with the gold visor so you can see his face. And all I was going to say was on his chest pack, it was just going to have a Major's gold oak leaf and say M. Mason. And that would have been the initial poster. And all the boomers, would have figured it out. And then later on. Well, the Major Matt Mason, I thought, I'll write a screenplay. So I wrote a screenplay for it. And I tried to shop it around. I actually knew that it was a licensed property, so I contacted Mattel and said, look, I'd like to get the rights, and I never heard back from them. I even tried contacting their legal department. Never heard back from them. And I was like, what does it take to get the rights? And Mattel has a form. It's probably still there if you go out on their website today. They have a form. If you want to to use a Mattel intellectual property, what you do is you fill out this form and it's submitted online, and then they get back with you. Well, I couldn't even get it. I submitted it twice. I thought maybe I'd submitted it wrong. And then I happened to be reading in the Hollywood trade magazines that none other than Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, and by the way, this tells you that as powerful as those guys are, A-list, even they don't get everything they want. They had actually gone to the studios with a bucket full of the toys from Major Matt Mason, poured on the table, and had this idea to make a Major Matt Mason movie. And that's why they'd gone, just as the fates would have it, I was trying to do this around the same time they were trying to shop it. And of course, I was just ignored. It never got green lighted. And I had two unrelated storylines. One would have been modern time and one would have been back in the 60s, which is when all this was designed. And Hanks, of course, wanted to play the titular character. So what happens is, the other thing I learned is that apparently in the 80s, and it was down here in Florida, there's a lot of little private independent studios here in Florida. They shoot a lot of movies down here, a lot of independent stuff. It's cheap, and you got all, anyway. Some guy had tried to make his own independent Major Matt Mason movie without getting permission from Mattel. He got their attention. They shut him down and bankrupted his little studio. It was a little underfunded operation to begin with, so it didn't take much, but that was a warning shot. Don't screw with Mattel. So I believe Mattel still owns the rights to it, and it is. I learned it is not. It is, in fact, apparently in the interim the license had expired, and the moment Hanks and Spielberg, the people even caught a whiff they were interested. Mattel went back and I don't know how you do it legally, but they reclaimed or revalidated their copyright on it. So that's how you end up with. Thanks, Garfield. That's how that happened. But I still love the toy. Well, when I talked about it, my brother, he sent me one as inspiration. I had this thing actually with me when I would be typing up the screenplay, and I think I had a couple of pretty cool ideas, I think. And when that all happened, I just rewrote the thing and gave it its own name and its own characters. Sort of a whole cloth thing, same storyline, but then I called it Terrafatum, which is Latin for the fate of Earth. It was the first part of a 3-part trilogy, which would have been part of a 9-part arc. So, I love writing stories, telling stories, coming up with ideas for movies. And if any of you guys have seen my magnum opus, Godzilla vs. the Wehrmacht, that's what I can do for $200 in my garage. So, if Toho ever decides to grant me the rights, we're going to have some fun. Tiger Tanks and Kaiju, baby. And don't tell me you don't want to see that. John, I'm not surprised you still have your originals. For those who don't know, John Fast Sports has an excellent collection of collectibles, including some really interesting large-scale cars. Go check a Scale Car Garage. He's done several videos on them. He's got a magnificent collection. Now, you're right about Major Matt Mason coming out during the Apollo period. In fact, I did manage to prepare a couple of slides for you. When Mattel decided to make it, they went to Collier's, and these are the spacesuits that had been or were being experimented with at the time. And the Collier's magazine spacesuit on the upper left, the blue one, is believed to have been kind of their initial impetus. Now, there's something people don't understand. Apollo and Gemini very much overlapped. So when you say the Apollo program, remember it started while Geminis were still flying. It was actually conceived, I think, during Mercury. But I think I'm pretty sure that this was the suit, you look at it next to Major Matt Mason, I'm pretty sure that was the one they decided to go with. Now, this was actually an undersuit for one of the earlier Apollo suits. I think that is the 1964 suit. I would imagine. Now, that one that I'm showing the picture of is in the Smithsonian. And I believe that was the undergarment, or one of the underparts for the beta cloth suit that you see. Remember the spacesuits had, if I remember off the top of my head, it's like 24 layers, and various materials. And they were the spacesuit and the PLIS backpack, which stands for Portable Life Support System, even today, they're impressive equipment. But for the time they were invented, they were absolutely just phenomenally advanced. And as you guys probably know, I think it was Playtex that made a lot of the spacesuit. They were having all kinds of trouble getting their mechanical spacesuits to work, and somebody got the bright idea, so why don't we quit having engineering companies design the spacesuit and have garment companies design it? And I want to say it was Playtex and Gentex, I think, or Gentex, that got the contracts and got involved in it. So well, Michael's asking about the hey, my commercial Godzilla versus the my little fan film Godzilla versus Girls and Panzer. Yeah, that would have to have a, you got to keep it kid safe, but still, don't tell me that would not have a strong audience, especially in the anime world. I didn't appreciate how big anime is. Gundam's living proof of that. So anyway, I thought I'd put these two guys out here, and because a lot of people in the comments, I just had them in the background on the table on the Tarbis, and a lot of people had asked about them. So that was a gift from my brother. My wife got me the Captain Laser, which was the big character that was originally supposed to be like an arch rival, but they decided to make him a friend, and I actually worked him into my screenplay, and that was. But these are based, I believe, on the 1964 suit. And, of course, the crawler and all the equipment was kind of cool because it was more or less based on ideas that had, sort of been tossed around at NASA and drawings done and stuff. And it had given people the, this might work. And a vehicle like this, although I think you need a way to elevate the rear so you can see where they're going. But a vehicle like this actually is considered, a viable, at least conceptually viable. And of course the suits would have to have an oversuit. I used to get Air and Space magazine and did a really good article on moon dust, and I didn't realize that moon dust is not like dust here on Earth. It's actually not dust at all. It's powdered rock. And the stuff's tough as diamonds. And apparently when they were getting the spacesuits back from the lunar missions and they were inspecting them, they found all kinds of wear on them, like a fine grit sandpaper. Everything was polished. And because of the electrostatic cling, it clung to everything. You see them in their suits, all kinds of gray clumped on them. First thing they had to do when they got in the lunar modules, dust themselves off. And it turned out to be, the lunar dust turned out to be a much more serious problem than anybody realized. Like the suits as we wore them on them could not do a long-term mission. The parts would wear down to the point they wouldn't be airtight. And they're like lunar dust, and because of its clinging nature, that's one of the biggest problems they're going to deal with if we ever do have a moon base. They'll probably have to have disposable oversuits that are tossed after every use to keep the inner equipment operational. And it got into everything, especially when CERN accidentally knocked the fender off of the lunar rover. In Apollo 17, they had to use one of their maps that was heavy plastic and clamp it down to make an impromptu fender, because that tire would spin even at those low speeds. And remember, there's no air to stop it, so that crap rooster tailed all over the place. Yes, that is correct. Playtex, the same people who make ladies' lingerie, were making the space, and I believe still do. One of the other things that also happened is that in the older suits, they did wear diapers. Unfortunately, the public became very aware of that when that astronaut went crazy and chased her wannabe boyfriend across the country and apparently wore diapers so she wouldn't have to stop for bathroom checks. And that kind of made it common knowledge. But they've been wearing diapers ever since the Mercury program. We've probably all seen The Right Stuff or other movies where Shepard had to wet his suit. And the outcome of that was they said, look, we need a urine retainment system. And they didn't have time before Grissom went up in his suborbital shot. So they were looking to in the minute, and according to the book Countdown by Heinemann, they just went and found a ladies' panty girdle with the largest cotton pad and gave it to Grissom. He wore it under a spacesuit. And Grissom got the record as the first man in space in ladies' lingerie. But you do what you got to do, right? Makes a funny story, but that stuff's actually in space. That's very serious. Things like dust and things floating around in the zero gravity is actually a very, very serious problem. And it's fun to make, kind of put. Just swallowing food is a problem. I think, was it Shara was the first one they had eat? I forget. No. Yeah, I forget. I think it was Shara might have been the first one to eat in space because they didn't really know if you could do it or not. And you have to force the food down. There's no gravity to pull it down. We have our systems are an alimentary canal, and without gravity to help pull it down, you got to force everything down. And everything wants to float even inside your tummy. It's one of the reasons they gave them those high protein. What was the official phrase? The high protein, low residue diet, because they didn't want the guys having to go in space, and if they did, they want to make sure it was infrequent, and you can figure out the rest. So, Monkey Division weapons. Oh, by the way, one other thing: if you ever get to do the Canaveral tour, if you get down to the Cape and you go, if you can get there, spend the money for the Canaveral tour. They take you out to where Shepard launched and everything, and the facilities are not that impressive to see in person because it was a pretty rudimentary program. But one of the things that shocked me was how many monkeys we killed before the famous Enos and Ham Mercury shots, and they were putting the little monkeys in all these primitive rockets just to see if they could take the G's and everything, and all kinds of system failures. I hate to think about how many poor monkeys gave it all for, America. But because of the space program, by the way, the space program did not invent Velcro, Velcro is a brand. It's actually a hook and loop fastener. And that was invented during the Second World War, I think in Sweden. And it was just popularized by NASA. But they did invent, amongst other things, the practical microwave oven and Pampers. Was it Glenn? It very well could have been. I knew it was an orbital flight because they didn't have time on the suborbital flights. Also, Glenn was the only one to be up there long enough to get hungry. That's right. They sedated the bears because you try to stuff a non-sedated bear into a spaceship and see what happens. Although I think there were smaller ones, but still. I don't know if they killed any of the bears. The animal testing, and I'm not, I have a heart too. It breaks my heart to see some poor little animal, taken out. But then, what can I say? Hey, at least we tried to bring them back. You guys know Laika, the Russian dog that sent up. You do know that Laika, they had never had any intention of bringing the dog back. It died in orbit. And my understanding was it was rather horribly. I'll let you look that up on your own. But I was like, come on, guys, So, that was the Major Matt Mason. I thought you guys might enjoy that since a lot of you had asked about it being there. And that was kind of the story behind that. And thank my brother Steven for giving me that. It was a great motivator when I was writing my screenplay. The Russian bear survived. Well, that's good. I kind of wonder if they used the bear just because it's a symbol of Russia, but then it makes sense. It is an anatomically similar mammal. So, oh God, talk about having screwed the pooch. Oh man, that was so wrong, but it's so right. It is true. I'm sorry to hear that, Chris. You see, no matter, I have that talent. No matter what I talk about or joke about, somebody sadly had something like that happen to them recently. It's my superpower. Oh, God. All right, guys. So, anyway. A lot of you guys have been sending me a lot of great pictures. I'm getting a lot of pictures of the builds in progress, including the B-25s. And I was plus a lot of other stuff. So the more photos, when I get about 130 photographs is normally when I do a viewer's build. It's just enough to make it worthwhile. Less than that, it kind of short. But not that I have to have that many. More than that, it tends to run a little long. But a lot of great pictures are coming in, so I'm going to probably ones in progress. I'll probably be including sort of, build, in process photos with some of them. And you guys, a few of you have sent me some pictures of you with your models, and I got to tell you, some of you guys look like you're just having way too much fun. This is Phil who does these beautiful wooden ones, and I'm glad though that you guys are. It thrills me that you guys are having a good time with this, because that's what this is all about, and it just tickles me pink when I see somebody, you know, in their happy place. So, in other news, you guys saw the pictures I posted of the Dodge Charger, the Daytona Charger. A little bit of a story behind this. I did talk to the owner very briefly. This one has the 440, not the Hemi. And I was on my way to work, and there's a gas station, a raceway I usually stop at, right where Highway 92 and Interstate 95 meet. And I get off to the right, go get gas, grab a coffee or something, and then head on down to 92. It intersects I-4 and on my merry way. And I saw this sitting there, and, you know, I was like, oh, it's real, it's real. I mean, I could not believe what I was looking at right at the pump next to me. There's the owner putting some fuel in it, petrol. And the brand new cost on that, I think it was $4,000 and something, which I did the math is about $35,000 of today's money. But I got to talk to him very briefly, and it's mostly original car. He said the estimate value on that being a 440 is probably about $500,000. And I didn't ask him how much he paid for it, but or how long he'd had it. But it was just a beautiful car. And I know there are a lot of wing car buffs out there. And that was actually I had seen a Superbird, which Richard Petty said was the best car he ever drove, sit on a lot in Tallahassee, Florida when I was in junior high. I guess it would have been at 72, 73. And it sat there for an entire year and never moved. And it was a big green Superbird. And I didn't realize, I thought the wing was just some sort of sales gimmick. I didn't realize you really did need that thing. And there's a couple of good documentaries about these cars online done by people that own both of them. The wings, by the way, the cars are not identical. A lot of people think that the Daytona Charger and the Superbird are just, they're the same thing, but no, they're not. There's actually quite a number of differences on them, and more than just the details. And one of them is that the wings are different. And as Rob Altus is pointing out, the 440 apparently is a much better street car, and it's no slouch. Don't get me wrong. When that thing fired up, I mean, the neighborhood knew it. That thing still is just a beast. The Hemi is more of a really for the track. And apparently the 440 is a little easier to keep running smooth too for the average person, average owner, or at least that's my understanding. But there were a fair number of differences in the cars. They were not, there are probably some interchangeability in them, but overall they are different cars, but they're just beautiful. I mean, they're works of modern art. And if I remember correctly, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, they're only how can I put this? They made, like, was it 500 or 1,500 of them so that they could call it a production car, but they were never really intended as a production car, you know, to be made in the tens of thousands. But I forget how many of them you had to make for NASCAR to consider it a production car and or a stock car. So they made whatever the number was, and ironically, they probably could have sold 10 times as many if they wanted to. But given how much money they haul in, it still would have been, you know, pennies in the bucket by big company car standards. So I think they like the idea of creating rarity. Chuck, I think I saw that YouTube video you're talking about, the side-by-side comparison. That's where I picked some of this up. I didn't realize how much difference there was between them, because at a glance they look almost identical. Yeah, I think it was it 3,000 to be legal? Okay, I'm gonna. A couple people are saying 500. I don't have a dog in that fight. I don't know. I know that I don't know, but I can tell you one thing. Now, John over at Fast Sports, who's up here, he's driven a lot of exotic cars, Veyrons and McLarens and stuff. So he's got a good insight. But I got to be honest. After listening, I think Crank Up, and I fly jets for a living, I'd be intimidated to drive that thing until I learned my way around it, because that puppy has got some juice to it. You know, we tend to think of the old engines as, you know, not being terribly powerful by today's standards because we can get so much power to a small engine. They may not be as powerful for their size, you know, relative size, but trust me, they are still quite the beast. And they are to be treated with respect. I hate to think about how many people with more money than sense wrap those things around phone poles. As one viewer commented to me recently, I asked him, because he's driven the Veyron and the Bugatti Veyron and the McLaren, you know, which is better. He had heard this from other people. And basically, I'm summing up that the McLaren is a sports car for sports car enthusiasts. The Veyron is a fast luxury car for rich people who want to try and impress their neighbors. And if anybody down there disagrees, let me hear what you got to say. I've never driven either one. They both scare me to death. But not that I wouldn't turn down the chance to drive them, just so long as there's nothing nearby for me to run into. And I'm the guy who managed to put a freaking CJ5 Jeep through a ditch trying to learn to drive with a clutch. So never misunderstand the damage Max can do when you put him behind the wheel of a car. Well, I was 16 at the time. So that just made my day. Is that not a beautiful machine? Just a freaking work of industrial art. Okay, enough of the car porn. So, real quick, guys, and for me, I can tell you right now, 67 GTO convertible. You get your choice of a classic car as your funmobile. What's it going to be? Start filling in the comments section. I know most of you guys already know what you want. Yeah, that's right, John. And I believe, can I say that right? Homologation was producing the number necessary to be considered a production car. Is that correct? I believe that's what it means. 70 Challenger, nice choice. I think that's what they were driving around in Burn Notice. Which, by the way, one of the Burn Notice cars, if you guys remember that TV show about the spy Michael Weston, that one of the cars, which was kind of the gutted one, that I think that's the one they kept blowing up, but it was still in one piece. It sold pretty cheap, like $8,000, but it might have just been a roller. 69 Transit, 57 T-Bird's beauty, 69 Fair. Oh yeah. The Lotus Super 7. Well, Chuck, you'll be happy when I get around to building that thing. I've decided that Caterham is going to be my car build car, and it may not be the only one I do, but that when we get around to the car builds, when did I say we were doing that next year? Whenever we're doing it, I've got a list somewhere. You guys are gonna have to keep me straight. I have to go back and watch my own videos. I really need to keep better notes. 1960 Rambler American, okay. I think give that somebody, okay. I was starting to say, that was an interesting choice, but now I get it. No, the TR6, okay, I was going to say, not seeing a lot of British cars on the list. Shock. You know, one of the things that impresses me about the cars, hey, Mark, you made it. One of the things that impresses me about the cars is how many different colors they can come up with and never really have the same one twice, which is probably why in a lot of hobby shops the model car paint rack is the most expansive, because you have all these very specific ones. The Lotus Elan, that is a beautiful car, and if I'm not mistaken, I read that book that was given to me on the show The Prisoner, and originally they wanted a Lotus Elan, but I think it was McGowan thought that was a little too... it already kind of been done. He was the one, I believe, that wanted the Lotus Super, or Super Lotus. Was it Super 7? Oh, I can't keep this stuff straight. The Mazda Miata. At my size, I saw a Mazda Miata, I fell in love with it, and I looked at it and was like, there's no way I'm going to get in this thing. I thought I'd get two of them and wear them like roller skates. But the people I know have Miatas just absolutely love the thing. Bill, you're going to like this. I had a 43 Willys MB. Unfortunately, I don't have the pictures of it on this computer. One of my dream cars was a World War II Jeep, and they were going for 20 grand. everywhere I looked. Well, I found a guy had one for about $7,000 that needed some work, but it ran. And I bought it from him, and I put about $1,500 in it. And actually, I think I only paid about $5,500, but I bought a bunch of extras. I had a hoot and a half, real easy to work on. Only problem is the seats don't adjust, and it was made for a 1943 American male who was about 5'10" and 150 pounds soaking wet, the average GI. So I could basically, it didn't have a cruise control, but I could pretty much lap my tummy over the steering wheel and go in a straight line. But anything would go anywhere. I used to take the kids for rides in it in the mud and stuff. The thing was 7 years old and bouncing around. Like, it was at home off-road. It didn't do so well on the road. The other one I wanted was a half-track, but where are you going to drive that thing? I did find one for sale for about $16,000. And for those who don't know, the half-track, which is just a 5-ton truck, an American white half-track is a 5-ton truck. I think it had the Cadillac inline engine. Most of them were made by White. They just pulled the skin and put the thin, flat, faceted armor on it, and with the louvers for the radiator. And they moved the drive wheel up behind the cab and put rubber band tracks on it. So it's actually a lot simpler vehicle than it looks like. Finding the rubber band tracks is fun, but I know a couple of guys that had Fieros, and one of them, John Usher, the guy was 6'3", slender build, most upbeat guy I ever met. His motto was, if I was any more positive, I'd be a proton. How he folded up. I think he was the one that owned the Fiero. How he folded up and got it. Now, I watched him do it one day. It was like watching someone fold a suit for him to get in. But my God, he loved that thing. The Get Smart Sunbeam Tiger. Kind of one of the, it was the Avengers. Yeah, there was the Avengers that had it was Emma Peel that had the Elan. That was it. Yeah, but the Sunbeam Tiger is one of those cars that only car aficionados really know. But by all account, it was an impressive little car. You're surprised it wasn't more popular. Pinto, man, how much my buddy Russell and I ran around in his Ford Firebomb Pinto and we knew about the danger, so we already had our escape plan. We get rear-ended. We're bailing, baby. Emma. Okay. Well, we're going about cars all day. That 31. What was it, Cadillac, or 31 Cadillac, that Johan kit that I was given, that's the other one I plan to do for the car build. So I'm going to plan to do that and the Tamiya. And I was thinking about making a deal with John over at Fast Sports. I was wondering what it would take to convert a kit model car that's simply made as a display kit into a slot car. And I have that NASCAR that was sent to me. And I was thinking about maybe building that and then send it to John once I'm done. And he could do a video on how you would convert it. So, but John, you and I have to chat about that sometime, see if that's something you'd be interested in doing, because I know you've got, like me, you've got so many projects going on. But I did not know that there was a connection between Ken Miles and the Sunbeam Tiger, but now that you mention that, kind of explains a lot about it, doesn't it? And now that I've started on cars, I can pretty much go make myself another cocktail, because this will be on autopilot for the next half hour. Oh, good. All right, John, I'll talk to you later about it. Maybe we can Zoom after this or tomorrow or something, whatever you feel like. Well, there's no rush. I only got a couple of days off. And the good news is my next trip does look like it will be compatible with an on build. I just got to figure out what I'm going to take with me. And so maybe I can do an on-the-road video. And because my schedule for all next month, I basically have the weekends off, but I'm working pretty much the guts of every week. So that's going to put a cramp on my output here. But, I got to keep the lights on. This whole working for a living thing, I think I should have been born into more money. That would have, Go get one, Chris. Come on, man. Oh, yeah. For later. Oh, interesting. There's an airplane called a cheetah. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a, well, now deceased airplane designer named Jim Beatty, who made the little BD-5 jet that you saw, I think it was in the movie Octopussy, that flew through the hangar. And yes, that was a real stunt, by the way. That was a real thing. They didn't have CGI in those days. But in fact, I have a little BD-5 that I'm working on that was sent to me that has turned out to be a much more difficult kit than I expected. But it's from 299 Models, I believe. But anyway, Beatty designed a lot of airplanes, and all of them were kind of their hallmark was small engines but really fast. Well, one of them that he designed, Grumman picked up on, and they made the Grumman American Trainer and the Grumman American Yankee, and I've flown them. They are peppy little airplanes, but they will bite you. And flying schools were using these things as trainers. They actually, okay, quick story. Now, mind you, I'm 12, 13 years old. My dad started teaching me to fly when I was 10. And when I was 12 or 13, Buster Burnett, who was a local crop duster pilot and rented a couple airplanes, bought a brand new Grumman American Trainer, which is basically the Grumman American Yankee with a few minor tweaks to it, set up as a trainer. And I guess I should grab a picture real quick just so you guys can have a mental image of what I'm talking about here. I think it was a Grumman AA1. Oh yeah, yep. Here we go. And this little bugger is actually an impressive little airplane in some regards. Let me just do a quick save here. And save as Livestream. Grumman. Okay, and let's do image. Okay. This is the Grumman Yankee. And the trainer, they're virtually identical. I think just one of them had a couple of stall strips on it. A little side-by-side two-seater. That's a free castering nose wheel, by the way. You steer with the brakes. Very, very simple airplane. Does not have flaps, as I recall. And maybe it did have flaps. Anyway. And has a sliding canopy. So you slide the canopy back, mount over, step up on the wing, step into it like a fighter plane, side-by-side. Very sporty little airplane. And for someone who knows how to fly, it's actually a really cool plane to own. One thing I would warn you, of course, is that if the engine conks on this airplane, you are coming down like a homesick manhole cover. So you better have your place to land already picked out. And anyway, my dad took me up and we flew around in it. And what I was amazed, because I was learning to fly an airplane called a Luscombe, which was of 1930s, early 40s design, and it was a longer airplane, tail wheel, high wing. Anyway, point being that the Luscombe, although a very sporty airplane in its own right, was relatively stable, had some weight in the controls. This airplane, this Grumman, extremely light controls, very touchy, not very forgiving. And when you give somebody an airplane that looks like a fighter plane, you kind of got to expect them to try and act like it's a fighter plane, which is always such a good thing when you're dealing with student pilots. Well, my dad and I flew the thing around, and because the one we flew in was bright yellow, my dad called it Tweety Bird. And the first thing that amazed me was how much runway it ate getting airborne. I mean, it gobbled up better than half of a 2,000-foot runway. Whereas the Luscombe I was flying, it was often 700-800 feet. And it was considered a ground lover by light aircraft standards. Well, as the story thickens, it's not that long. My dad actually, I think, had made the comment with how touchy the airplane was, is that, for again, someone who knows what they're doing, it's fine. But for a student, somebody's going to hurt themselves in that thing. And Orange Tabby, you're in a safe place. You can say whatever. You can type whatever you want. We won't tell. The internet may rat you out, but we won't tell. Anyway, so Not 8-10 months later, two guys got in the airplane, went flying around, flying it like a crop duster, yanking and banking down low, swooping, buzzing the cattle, having a grand old time. I was flying off of a duster strip, so everybody was impressed with the way the crop duster pilots would get down, on the fields and pull up at the end and everything. And apparently they think what happened was these guys were making a buzz run over some cows, pulled the yoke back too abruptly, and hit an accelerated stall, which basically means that the airplane rotates so quickly that the wing cannot produce lift. It's not a smooth rotation, and it kind of goes sort of belly first into the wind, stalls the wing out, and it went right into the trees. And one of them was killed, and one of them was very seriously injured, had apparently total amnesia afterwards. So sadly, my dad's prediction about that airplane and student pilots came to pass, and apparently it got a bit of a reputation for that. But flying schools loved them, students loved them, so they kept ordering them. And I'm not blaming the airplane. The airplane did what it was supposed to do. It just wasn't the kind of airplane they should have been using as a trainer, or at least not a primary trainer for civilians. That's, my humble opinion. But they made a bigger version. I went there to go here. They made a bigger version called the Tiger. The Tiger had a bigger engine and a 4-seater. And to this day, it is still a very sought-after airplane. It even went back into production in the 80s or 90s. And the Tiger, although I don't think I put 4 people in it, that airplane with a fixed gear, fixed prop, it'll do 135 knots on a 180-horse engine, which is impressive. Wings are longer, more stable, anti-stall equipment on it, so better reputation. But anyway, that's the story on the Grumman aircraft, and it's unfortunate, but I got to fly one of those later on, years later, and even as an experienced pilot, I treated it with respect, had a great time in it. But I will tell you right now, that's if you fly it the way you're supposed to, you won't have any problems. It'll behave. But you start getting smart alecky and cocky with that airplane, it will turn around and bite you like a cobra. One thing I do recommend, though, if how can I put this? There are some people I know who have the financial resources they want to learn to fly. They buy an airplane and they get all of their primary flight training in that airplane. That's actually a good idea if you can afford it, because then once you're licensed, this is the airplane you trained in, and you know how to relatively well know how to fly it. But nothing will save you from a bad decision. Now, into other news. First off, you know what? We have an unboxing, and I had to go back to my emails. Let's see. Larry, I believe I got an email from Larry that a box was coming, and it came. Now, I did slice it open earlier, but let's see what's in it. Try to knock everything over. Okay. Well, here's it. Okay, this is a packing slip. So Larry did send me an email that he was saying, okay, here we go. Aha, Snoopy, you have company. Haha, das red Baron, ja. We will get you Snoopster. Snoopster? Well, thank you for that, Larry. I appreciate it. I'll probably put that together in the next day or so and I actually have the Snoopy right up here. But if I try to get up with all the stuff from, I'm going to knock something over. And that is awesome. Now I have the complete set. Motorized propeller, press and stick decal. The cross base, yeah. This is good, das ist gut, das ist gut. Yeah. The Dreidecker Flugzeug. Which, by the way, is why they're called DR1s, for Dreidecker, which means drei, being the German word eins, zwei, drei, for three. Decker is how the Germans say wing. So they're literally saying 3-wing, although technically you got to count that part under the landing gear between the wheels, so it's technically a 3 1/3 winger. But still, DR1, Dreidecker. Dreidecker ein. That is awesome. Thank you for that, Larry. Now, that soft package I mentioned that came in, there is a letter here. Time for the old man glasses switch for my readers. Why does he look like Dick Dastardly? That's a good... You know what he does? It's probably using the same model. I mean, Because as you guys know, the Baron did not have a mustache. Now, you guys may notice a stack of things I have here. I'll just put them down here for right now. Whoops. These are rocket mission and rocket type patches. And let me explain. I got this from Roscoe. And no, that is not his real name. Hi, Max. We don't know each other, but I'm one of your many subscribers on Max's Models. Well, thank you. Let me just say how much I enjoy your channel and hope you continue. Well, thank you. That's the plan. I would appreciate it if you kept my information just between us. That probably goes without saying. I'm very careful with what I put out on the web and use a pseudonym Roscoe instead of my real name, which is actually Roscoe. No, it's not Roscoe. Roscoe is my late best friend and buddy. He was a dog. Boy, I'm having the worst luck with dogs tonight, aren't I? And he helps to keep a little anonymity. And okay, makes sense. I'm not paranoid or anything. Who has time for that with the NSA, CIA, and my strange neighbor from the planet Zortax watching me all the time? You got one of those too? Mine's from Meepsort, but I get your point. But I digress. A little more me. Okay. I won't give his age out, but he's one of us. Lives up in Georgia. He's retired from the Air Force, Master Sergeant. And he worked on the instrument landing systems and TACANs. Now, being a pilot, I have a particular warm spot in my heart for anybody that worked on instrument landing systems, given how many times I've had to land in gooey weather using them. So, and TACAN is a military VOR, basically. It's a variable omni range receiver, but for the military. They have their own system. Not the airborne units, but the ground-based beacons and systems. After that, I went to work as a civilian contractor, worked out of Vandenberg, did pre-flight testing on C-band transponders on the West Coast, including on the Titan II, Titan IV, SpaceX, Delta II, and IV, including the Heavy. A host of orbital science programs, including Minotaur, Taurus, and Pegasus, which was launched out over the Pacific from the belly of an L-1011. I remember that. The air launched, I'd always wonder why they weren't doing that sooner. Also involved Peacekeeper and Minuteman III testing and orbital sciences. I wanted to send you these mission patches from many of the West Coast launches I was involved with, most of them between 2003 and 2014 using C-band. They quit using C-band transponders in the birds with the advent of GPS translators. I knew the writing was on the wall. The end of the contract in 2015 was welcomed by myself. I went to work for a medical diagnostic company as a worker bee and loved it. The internal politics... Okay. Stop strangling the cat. The internal politics and people in general involved with launch programs kind of lessened my zeal for things. I know what you mean. Somebody's not happy back there. So these things were relegated to a drawer for several years. As I stated, I really like your show and felt that the patches are something you may or might not enjoy having. I love it. Thank you very much. I hope you do. And my wife stated that your wife might enjoy the Yoda patch. She did. In fact, it's not in the stack here because she already took it. So, I forgot what a CRD is, but something has to do with the reentry vehicles on the Minuteman III. Okay. I'm assuming it's a capsule reentry device or something like that. Some of the patches are self-explanatory, while others I have attached notes. If you have any questions, comments, contact information is below. I'll probably have to contact you because some of the paper parts fell off when I was taking them off, and I didn't see which ones they came off of. But let's take a look at a few of them, guys, if you'd like. Okay. There's one. Whoa! Come back here. There's one in particular I liked. Okay, this is 30th Space Wing Atlas V. These are awesome. By the way, most of them have Velcro attached to them. So if I wanted to put them on something, but beautiful patch. And the next one is is this? Yes. MDA FTG 06B 30th Space Wing. You'll have to tell me what all that means. But it reads, apparently it's some sort of rendezvous with two bullets, because it says, it's like hitting a bullet with a smaller bullet while wearing a blindfold, riding a horse. I love it. That is awesome. And it's a cool looking patch, don't you think? Okay. Next. We'll go through these kind of quick. 30th Space Wing, Minotaur Launch 66. Route 66. I love that. That's a nice tie-in. People make these patches are clever. Orbital, NASA KSC JPL, and then that's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, KSC, Kennedy Space Center, NASA, obviously. It's like RTB, Return to Base. New Star Flight 41. It's got an airliner on it, so that's got to be the Pegasus. Yeah, it's Orbital Sciences. This is the Pegasus that was launched from an L-1011. You see the L-1011 in the picture. That's beautiful. Okay, real quick, let's just go through these. Okay, this one's got some kind of a rat holding a missile. Atlas V, NROL 39, 30th Space Wing. We'll just bang through these real quick. Okay, Falcon 9, Cassiopeia, 30th Space Wing. The hootinest, tootinest, shootinest Falcon in the West. Oh, and they got Yosemite Sam on there. Copyright. Let's see. Let's go here. NRO 30th Southwest. Primoris Gravis X Ocassus. Okay, one of you Latin buffs, I'll have to figure that out. Wait a minute. Task Force. Oh, God, I thought it said Trash Force. I'm sorry. Task Force 49. L49. Beautiful patch. Don't know what all that means, but it's cool. Okay, this one has a sticker. This is the OSC Taurus. Victoria Commissa Omnibus. Awesome looking patch. Oh, wear them when you launch rockets. Oh, man, that is such a great idea. Delta IV Heavy. First Delta IV Heavy launch from Vandenberg. When you're strapping 3 rockets together, I mean, yeah, that's right. We're badasses. Ooh, I remembered the chaser this time. All right, let's see what we got here. Minotaur. DARPA. Orbital, and a bunch of other. Orbital Suborbital Program. Minotaur 4 Light. Is that like a light beer? Again, another beautiful patch. These are all gorgeous. Artwork alone. You guys know my fascination with art. Oh! Before I go any further, speaking of art, I have some great news. I got an email from Mike Machat over at Celebrating Aviation with Mike Machat. He passed 10,000 subscribers. That's awesome because he has a magnificent channel. You guys know I love Mike's channel. Whoops! Oh, gosh, good heavens. Calamity! Leave it to Max. Okay. Apparently, I guess this is some kind of mission control thing. On console, 24 hours a day. Dux Gloriosus. Yeah, nothing. You can't say they don't have a sense of humor. We're going to talk about Mike's channel a little bit in just a minute here, so don't let me forget. 30th Space Wing Atlas V. That's a California launch, I believe. And then we have Orbiting Carbon Observatory 2 with some kind of math equation on the bottom. Okay, you are an uber geek when you're putting a math equation on your patch. But then again, they are literally rocket scientists. Okay, this one I really like. Taurus Rocksat 2 XL First Flight. Tell me this is not just an awesome patch. Swales Space Technology 5 JPL NASA. It looks like the orbital, the thing that launched off the L-1011, putting up some little microsatellites or something from the looks of it. Still awesome looking patch. I use awesome too much. I need to find. Oh, I'm sorry. How many forgive me. Whoa, stand up. I'm the one that's been drinking. Why are you falling over? Okay, Minuteman 3. That's the note on back. Oh, you're looking at the back side of the rocket. Okay. You're literally looking at the back side of the boosters. Spin that around. Make me dizzy. The missile defense deep. Okay, hold on. I'm saving that for last. Hold on. Atlas 5. 20th Range Operations Squadron. Beautiful. This last one. This is as good as the 7-Eleven spoof. The Missile Defense Depot. Put Office Depot on there, you never know the difference. Oh, that is awesome. Set those over here. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. Almost used his real name. Thank you, Roscoe. And your information is safe with me. That is wonderful. I do appreciate it. Let's see. I just going off my little checklist here. Pen's about to die. As big as that pen, it's about to die. Okay, got. All right. Now, I got an email just before we started today's oh gosh, gotta go back to the other glasses. I can't read the computer now. Let me see what I have not checked the comments since I started with the patches. Yes, I did see the one with Mike announcing the 10K. That's great. Oh, and God bless him, he gave me a little post-credit thing. I almost cried. That was so sweet of him. That was very, very considerate. Mike is an extremely. He and I had lunch together one time. He's just a wonderful guy. Just a wonderful guy. Very polite. Very, 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 very knowledgeable. And it's great because I'll talk about his channel for just a second. I want to tell you why I like it so much. Not just because I like Mike personally, which I do very much, but also because Mike, I'm a guy, my entire channel, all of this is just a happy accident. I couldn't be more thrilled with it, but it was never anything I'd planned. And I've been in aviation, in and out of it in various levels, usually on the extremely low rungs for most of my life. But Mike has actually been there. I mean, he knew Jaeger and Crossfield and my personal favorite, Bob Hoover. I saw Jaeger speak one time. I never saw or heard any of the other guys before. I only know them through, the legends and the books and the videos and everything. But he knew these people personally. And, he is literally kind of the been there, done that guy. And he's gotten to fly in a lot of these things. He's flown in all kinds of hot equipment and everything because being an aviation artist gave him this unusual backstage pass that most of us can only dream of. And he is very aware of how fortunate he is, and he's appreciative of it, and I really, really admire that. A lot of us, myself included, I know a lot of people who have done a lot of things, but they sort of act like, well, I'm the greatest, so I deserved it. And sometimes they were, and they're right. I can't take that away. Props to them, but Mike is very self-aware of the cool things he's gotten to do, and it's always nice to, when someone just. I am so appreciative of what I've got. I mean, by all that's right and holy, I should probably be working at Walmart. I did work hard to get where I'm at, and I went just the slowest road you could go to get there. But sometimes I have to kind of pinch myself. I'm like, well, I'm getting paid to fly jets and overnight in Puerto Rico and stuff. How did I rate this? And it's just, I guess what it is I'm appreciative of what I've got. And I am so happy when I watch other people who, just are thrilled with what they're getting to do. I want to be careful how I say this. Don't want to get myself in any trouble. There are people that I have worked with, and I suppose once in a blue moon occasionally still work with on a rare occasion, that are flying jets for a living and seem to have no appreciation for where they are in the history of humanity. Just the fact that we live in this century, our poor live better than Pharaohs. Pharaoh didn't have air conditioning. Pharaoh didn't have a cell phone. Pharaoh didn't have a car. Okay? We live better than the royalty did up until 100 years ago, maybe less. Just to live in the time we live, I feel so blessed. But the fact that I get to do what I do for a living, that I look forward to going to work. Now, sometimes you look at the weather and you really don't want to fly today, but, got to have some balance in the universe, right? Got to be a little give for the take. But really, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing for a living, I have no idea what I would be doing. None whatsoever. I don't have any other skills. And it's just nice to listen to people who appreciate where they are in the world and what they've got to do and things like that. And I occasionally deal with the person who's flying a jet for a living, staying in a 4-star hotel at company expense, and all they do is gripe. My crew meal is cold. Well, we don't get crew meals, but, I couldn't find anything decent to eat at the airport. I shouldn't have to fly one. I'm like, oh, God, will you please just shut up? Can you not look at the magic? You and I are sitting here with picture windows to the substratosphere, moving 7 miles a minute in a pressurized metal tube and getting paid real wages to do it. Will you please just shut up? Hey, Nigel, glad you made it. So anyway. All right. Who's going to dare me? I'm delicate. Well, that sounds cool. Running a music store. Everybody loves music. I was waiting for it. There it is. For those who don't recall from the last time, every time I say build. There they go, build. Remember, the more I build, the funnier I get. Oh, there's the dare. And hold on. Sorry, Major. Shields down. Guys, stand by. Got the chaser this time. 3, 2, 1. Smooth. There it is, John. That's the good stuff. I'm having way too much fun, and I'm appreciative of it. By the way, guys, by the way, one more thing on Mike's channel. If you guys haven't, if anybody here hasn't seen it, it's called Celebrating Aviation with Mike Mashat. Even the title, Celebrating Aviation, I love that. That is the perfect title for what he's doing. And you couldn't find a better ambassador for models, for aviation, and for art. I think he does just a fantastic job. I really look forward to all of his new videos coming out. There are a few channels that I follow that I really get a kick out of. There's one that I Patreon, and there's that is Indy Nidell's channel on World War II. But the ones I really enjoy when I see a new videos come up are Mustard, which is, I don't know where he got that name, but he does these beautiful 3D graphics on like famous rail projects and famous aircraft. He did one of the Elton 11, the Russian Concorde, a lot of great content, just fantastic. I think he's moved a lot of his stuff to Nebula. I may have to go ahead and shell out a couple of bucks a month to get behind the paywall, but these guys do such good work. There's Mike's channel, there's Mustard, there's Wendover Productions, and one or two others that I really enjoy. They don't put out content that often because they're, that's kind of what makes it good. I put out content as fast as I can, but you guys know I'm just going to Tarbis and shooting what's on my mind, cobbling it together as fast as I can. Still, it eats up 3-4 hours out of a day. It's amazing how long you sit down and go, I'm just going to shoot a quick video. I'm going to throw it up, and I think about what I want to say. It takes 20 minutes to get everything ready and set up, yeah. Hi, it's me. Welcome back, blah, blah. And then I get it. I tinker on the models a little more. Then I back inside and go, and then 2 hours goes by before I have a 10-minute video up. And I'm like, just chasing files down and putting pictures and waiting for everything to compile. It's just amazing how the time gets away from you. But I do. Drachnefell I enjoy greatly. In fact, I just watched his one on the reserve fleet, which is one of his longer ones. If you're into ships at all, Drachnefell is your guy. And John, poor John, he has these beautiful videos on slot cars, and he's putting I don't know, John, how many hours is it? Because your productions are a lot slicker than mine, so it's got to take you a couple of days to put one of them together. Shaggy Buds, I actually was checking my emails just before I came down here, but I am so backed up on the videos that people have sent me links to watch. I know Peter Jackson actually manufactured World War I aircraft for a while, and there was that whole deal with the guy that ripped him off and that whole ugly thing, which, by the way, is one of the reasons Wingnut Wings went away. Apparently that is all interconnected. For those, I watch anything that pops out from the Tank Museum from Bovington or from the Chieftain's Hatch. And if my favorite is, what's his name? Mustache Boy over at Bovington. Oh, come on, somebody, you know who I'm talking about. The ratio is 1 minute of viewing video to 6 minute shot. That's actually a pretty good ratio. Hey, Kevin. No, hey, guys. It's not a military formation. You come in as you can. Yeah, I watched Lance Geiger, the history guy. David Fletcher. That's who I was thinking of. The mustache. David Fletcher is a bloody national resource for England. He does a lot of those things. I enjoyed his one about the 5 worst tanks. Just the way he speaks. He's just so matter of fact down to earth. And ironically, his background is not in armor, but in ships. He was, I believe, they actually interviewed him about his past, and I think he'd been a merchant sailor or something. He got into tanks later in life. I enjoy Mark Felton's channel. Mark Felton's actually been interviewed. He and John Parshall have been interviewed on several of the documentaries I've seen on television. And Mark Felton keeps coming up with these interesting, obscure videos and very well researched. One of my favorite people to listen to is John Parshall. I've read his books, Shattered Sword. John also, God bless him, he and Anthony Tully both answered a lot of my emails when I was putting together the Battle of Midway thing. And they're really, they're doing the deep dives that have to be done. And ooh, Smitty 560 is about to start a firestorm. The Beaumark missile made the CF-105 redundant in theory. Yeah, only in theory, because I don't think Beaumark ever worked that well. And when Diefenbaker decided to go with conventional warheads, he made it all but useless. And depending on who you want to believe, that's the reason he got unelected. But I'll leave that to our Canadian viewers to comment on, because I only know what I read, but several sources have said that the CF-105, the Beaumark, the whole thing was just the end of Diefenbaker's administration. And to be honest, from my point of view, rightfully so. Yeah, but I think they switched back to nuclear under the following administration, if what I read was correct. The History Underground's good. Also, I've guys seen the Cold War. There's a Cold War channel that's really good. I gotta be honest, I am really impressed with production values of some of these channels, these history oriented channels. They just do really. I'm very impressed with what a lot of these guys are putting together. And oh, one other thing I was going to mention real quick, guys. Now this doesn't. Some of you guys like John has a Scale Car Garage, and a couple of you guys have your own YouTube. Trays has been putting up some of those World War I airplanes on videos and stuff. If anybody out there, and we talked about Mike and his channel, if any of you guys want to post videos on YouTube or start a channel or something, just for kicks and giggles, I highly recommend it. Even if it's just pictures of your models or something, that's kind of what I started out doing. But I would recommend it because it's a great little outlet and a good way to share. Now, if you just want to, send your pictures to me, that's fine. But don't be afraid to put your stuff out there. Remember, if you get some nasty grams, you can always just, mute them or whatever. When I first kicked this thing off, remember, again, as I said, this was all a happy accident. It was kind of a lark. I got a little negative feedback that really kind of torqued me, and I was ready to just toss in, screw it, I don't need this. And John over at Scale Model Garage, Fast Sports here, he taught me out the ledge. And we all owe him a great thank you for that, because I was like, I don't need the negativity. But he was right. You know what? There's always one in the crowd. Just don't let it bother you. And don't be afraid. And if you want to, just turn off comments. All you got to do is say it's safe for children. That pretty much turns off the comments right there. You see now that things are lightening up. Yeah, I got to agree with Fast Sports. I got to agree with John on that. I think you guys... I don't want to push you into something you don't want to do, and I certainly don't want to lay any pressure on you. But, show us what you do. Start your own channel, or shoot some videos, send it to me. I'll put it on mine. But it just, don't be, all I'm saying is don't be afraid to if you want to. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can get virtually free shareware that'll let you edit stuff if you don't have something on your computer. And it's just creating the videos is fun. My wife, I think somebody once asked me, what do I like better, building the models or making the videos about them? And I had to ponder that. And well, they're both creative exercises, so I enjoy them both. So, on to other things. I want to talk about a couple of things that I was asked about today. First, let's start off with old instructions. I sent, and I forget the name off the top of my head because I'm an absent-minded old man. I was asked, did I still have the Vostok instructions, because one of the glue troopers, I want to say Dale, had the same kit, but he didn't have the instructions. I just emailed him some scans of this. And yes, to answer the question, I don't throw the instructions away, just like I tend not to throw the boxes away. And I didn't realize how many of them the drawer was overflowing with them. So, there is, I think it's a Facebook channel that's dedicated to just old instructions. In fact, that's before somebody sent them to me. That was where I got some of the instructions for the Stagecoach that I built. And oh boy, if there was ever a kit that's not intuitive and you need the instructions of that Stagecoach, because unless you know something about stagecoaches, you don't know where anything goes, because it's not like a car or plane where you go, well, I know that's an alternator, and I pretty much have a good idea where that goes. Also, I had somebody ask if I could talk about amphibians. Yes, I can. Now, nope, not the one I wanted. We'll get back to that in a minute. We'll get to the video footage shortly. He was particularly talking about the Grumman Duck, the J2F Duck, which I forgot to get a picture of. And let me, for those who don't know, Grumman, oh, ironically, okay, J2F. Okay, get rid of it. I don't know where that came from. There we go. If you guys have seen Murphy's War, you've seen a Grumman Duck. But that's a movie with Peter O'Toole where he is on the merchant ship that is sunk by a U-boat in South America, and he managed to get the airplane flying again and attacks the boat with it. Alright, just give me a second here. I'll have the image up. Go plus image. Open. Browse. There it is. Booyah. Okay, that is a Grumman J2F duck. J means like light utility aircraft, 2 version 2, F means Grumman. That was a Navy amphibian. You'll notice there are wheels tucked into the pontoon, the centerline sponson or centerline pontoon. And that would extend down, and it can. There's some good footage. Kermit Weeks has one of the last flying ones, and one of his Kermit cams, he takes it out for a flight. Now, the reason I thought I would talk about this particular one is because I gave elderly care to the Grumman Duck is not the same as the SOC Seagull. The SOC is a Curtiss product, and it was never amphibious. The SOC could have wheels or the centerline pontoon. The Duck, you'll notice the pontoon is not removable. It's an integral part of the fuselage, and the wheels on it are integral to the airplane. It was made as an actual amphibian. Amphibian means water or land. The PBY-5A Catalina was amphibian. It had the wheels. The straight PBY-5 was a flying boat or a float plane only. It did not have wheels on it. It also had a longer range because it didn't have the extra weight of carrying that landing gear assembly, which is, believe me, massive. But I gave elderly care to a gentleman who had been a airman radio gunner on one of these in World War II up in Dutch Harbor, Alaska. And we were talking about Dutch Harbor a while back when we were talking about the Akutan Zero and the crew that was strafed by Koga and all that other stuff. He was up there for all of that. And he also was in the OS-2U Kingfisher, which was another airplane that either had wheels or floats, but not both at the same time. It was not truly an amphibian. I mean, you could mount wheels on it, make a land-based plane, put floats on it, make a float plane out of it. So one could argue it's sort of an amphibian, but it couldn't do both at the same time like the Duck could. The Duck is also unusual another way. If you will note, and he pointed this out to me, and that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Most biplanes, not all of them, but a lot of biplanes, the lower wing tends to be a little shorter than the top wing. Now, I don't think that's the case with the Stearman and a few others. But this airplane, the wings are equal distance or equal wingspan. But, quick note, the top wing still has more wing area because the entire top wing is airfoil, whereas the lower wing, you have the fuselage in the middle that kills off some of the airfoil area. So even though they're the same wingspan, the top wing still produces percentage-wise more of the lift. Also, if you look below the cockpit, behind the wing, you'll see what looks like a window. It looks like a window because it's a window. And if I'm not mistaken, they could stash 2 or 3 people inside the fuselage down there, which is what they often did when they flew rescue missions. And they were sometimes even used as liaison aircraft to carry people around. And they would just put them there in the fuselage where, you know, that could not have been a fun place to be. Especially if you're landing on the water. But he had wanted to talk about amphibians, so I thought I would throw that in there because he liked the Grumman Duck. He's working on a model of one, I believe. And the Duck is an interesting airplane. According to Bob, the gentleman I gave elderly care to, he actually preferred it to the Kingfisher, not only because it had wheels and a pontoon, but he said that the Duck, you could take it out on still water, and it had enough power and enough wing that when you rev that engine up, it would just get roaring, off she'd go and take off, and not a problem. It was just a good, solid airplane. It wasn't fast. I mean, look at all the parasite drag. But apparently the Kingfisher, and a lot of these scout planes, these amphibious or float scout planes, were underpowered a little bit, I think, on purpose to help give them long range because they sipped gas. But he said sometimes the Kingfisher, they just couldn't get it to unstick, and they'd have to have a destroyer or a minesweeper go out there and cut a couple of wakes in the water so they'd have like a ski ramp. They get their speed up and hit the wake, and that would get it up on the step, and then it could get airborne. They were could be pretty anemic. And he only had a single 30 caliber machine gun back there with a very limited arc of fire. He's kind of like, when they were at Dutch Harbor, they flew into one of the attacks, and the pilot was like, screw this, and they just ducked into the clouds until the attack was over. There's nothing else they could do. Glencoe, I think, still makes the old, I don't know, it's ITC version of this. Oh, by the way, that brings up another point. I was talking about ITC. Somebody asked me about had I heard of Ringo models. And I know I mentioned them in one of the videos, and it's probably the ITC video. Ringo was around for, I don't know, 4 years, between like 62 and 67, maybe 5 years. It was actually Ringo Toy Company. But when ITC quit making models, Ringo got some of their molds and kept having shots run, and sold them under the Ringo logo. And then they sold everything off to, I think, to Glencoe, who has them now. So whoever it was that was asking about Ringo models, yeah, they were short-lived. They were a toy company that just dabbled in models for a while. They got into it cheap, got out of it. And that's really not a whole lot of information I could find on them. Okay, old insurance, we talked about all that. Okay. Talked about that. Now, my brother and I had a little chat earlier today. I'm almost halfway surprised he hasn't called me. Where's my phone? Oh, well. So, he was asking me a question to ask you guys. And, hey, Max, I recently picked up my first Guillow's kit. And it's pronounced Guillow's, as I understand. Do you have any building recommendations? Yeah, I would use CA glue because it dries very quickly, and you're going to need a whole bunch of pins to hold stuff in place with. And you're going to need a lot of good various grit sanding paper. And be careful because they are all kinds of fragile. I would cover it with Monocoat personally, if it's going to be a flyer. Now, my brother and I were talking about, this is kind of aviation specific, but a time that a group of aviators made a disproportionately large impact on a battle, or for that matter, the outcome of a war. Now, of course, kind of the two natural go-tos are Battle Britain, Battle of Midway. Both of them, of course, Battle of Midway's fought over a couple of days, Battle of Britain's fought over a couple of months. Aviators made the difference. But in both cases, you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of aviators. But the one we kind of settled on, believe it or not, and some of you guys may or may not have heard this, at a time that a small group of aviators made a disproportionate impact, was possibly the Salween River Gorge. Now, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with that, but this is actually, they were actually flying Tigers, flying against the Japanese in China, and the Flying Tigers have been largely decimated. Actually worse than decimated, because decimated literally means a loss of 10%. But the squadrons have been whittled down more to a lack of parts than anything else. But I believe it was I want to say the Japanese Red Dragon Division was about to cross the bridge at Salween River. And the Chinese army was ready to blow the bridge to keep them from crossing. Now, that would have stopped them for a while, but eventually they were going to cross the river. That unit had to be knocked out. And this was apparently a particularly notorious Japanese division. They were both effective and brutal. And the five remaining P-40s that the Flying Tigers had, and by the way, they had to get permission from Chiang Kai-shek to do this because there were a lot of Chinese refugees intermixed with the Japanese, but Chiang's attitude was the Japanese have got to be stopped at any cost. So yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe these were the E model P-40s. A lot of the famous photos of the Flying Tigers had the early B models with in American, they would have had twin 50s in the nose and 30 calibers, a pair of 30 calibers in each wing. Actually, in China, I think they were using Chinese machine guns. I'm not sure what the caliber was. But the point is that at this point, they had the E models that had the guns, 3 guns in each wing. And I think they had the Chinese answer to the 50 caliber. But there were only 5 of them left flying. And that was mostly due to lack of parts, fuel, everything else, but mostly parts. And these 5 airplanes got permission and went and repeatedly attacked the Japanese when they were bottlenecked at the Salween River Gorge. And they did enough damage to that division to make it combat ineffective, and it had to retreat. And that was as far into China as the Japanese ever got. Now, the reason we came up with this particular, and I think towards the end of the battle, they were down to about 3 airplanes. I think 2 of them had just had mechanical problems, probably caught some ground fire, but they just couldn't keep more than that flying. I agree with Steffi Kohu that Malta is another one. But Boeington had been a flying Tiger. I don't think he was around at this point, though. I think he'd already gone back. And despite what you see in the TV show, he didn't steal an airplane. He just went back. But the impact of only this handful of airplanes on a much large, because they caught them in a bottleneck. I've heard that they wiped out over 10% of the unit, and it didn't sound like a lot, 10%, but 10% is enough to make a division not combat effective. And it was probably worse than that, because they also destroyed a lot of vehicles and supplies. And I don't know how many missions they flew. I think it took place over several days. And if I'm not mistaken, by the time it was over, I think only 2 or 3. I think only 3 planes were still flying. But the amount of damage that they inflicted in this short amount of time, and the impact it had on the overall, because if they'd gotten across that gorge in numbers, India was open to them. And there's an argument to be made that the Salween River Gorge may be the most impact that this, I guess the way to put it would be per aircraft, per pilot, may have been the largest impact. Midway was absolutely the Battle of the Pacific, but you're talking about hundreds of airplanes, although there were only, if I'm not mistaken, 14 bomb strikes. Let's see, Kaga got 5. Akagi went down with 1 hit from Dick Best, although another hit near the waterline, the rudder, from either Weber or the other one, so we'll just call that a hit. 7. Soiree got 3, I think, and here you got 4. So 14 bombs, wiped out the Japanese fleet. But that was part of 300 aircraft, over 50 of which were shot down. Whew. God, we toss these numbers around. You stop and think about that. That's 100 people. It's a lot of sacrifice. I actually, Shaggy Buds, I have 2 B5N2s on the shelf in 1/72nd scale. One from Mania and one from Nishimo. And I'm going to tell you right now, without batting an eye, the Mania kit was better. Although you do have to file down the sides of the internal cockpit section to get it to close properly. But a few fit issues, but a lot more detail. The thing that Nishimo had was it had the folding wings, but they don't really look as good. But it's kind of cool. It's a gimmick, but it's cool. Both good kits, but I would definitely, if somebody wants to, unless they want to build it with the wings folded, I would definitely recommend the Mania kit, which, oh gosh, who bought out Mania's molds? Mania didn't make that many kits. I did them in one of the history videos, kit company history videos, but the ones they did were really good for the time, especially. So, yeah, John's right, it's sad. Nishimo is the brand, yes. But I would recommend the Mania kit, which I want to say was picked up by Hasegawa. Go watch my video. I'll tell you there. God, I make these videos, and when I go to the next one, I kind of core dump the previous one. I'm making this stuff, and I can't remember it. Smitty pointed out that some of the PBJs had searchlights and anti-sub, which became common on all anti-sub aircraft. But during the war, one of the things the British had learned was if you put lights along the leading edges of the wing and turned them on at the right frequency, the right wattage, it made the airplane virtually invisible because the light broke up the silhouette of the aircraft, but it didn't really illuminate it that well. But what you're talking about, the searchlights, which are incredibly bright, and it's hard to believe you could find, you use the radar to get close, flip on the searchlight, but they found them and they sank them. It worked. And that was common up to the 70s to see that on anti-submarine aircraft, P2Vs and planes like that. It was, Mania did go, yeah, they did sell their molds to Hasegawa. But the Mania kits, if I remember correctly, one thing, the Mania kits did not come with pilot figures, I don't think. But I know the Nishimo kits did. All those, they're 1/72nd scale, so, it's three guys kind of. But 1/72nd scale, what do you expect? Now, what else did I have? Oh, yeah. There was one other thing. Somebody had suggested talking about the things that are annoying to each type of modeling. So here's the little quick list I threw together I thought you guys would appreciate. With model sailing vessels, obviously the tedious, which some people enjoy this part of it. I know Bruce over at Mystic Modeler Ships, he specializes in sailing vessels, and of course the rigging, all the rigging on the ship. With tanks, it's all the track links. And somebody emailed me that they had one model tank that with all the track links and all the pins that came over to, and all the wheels and everything, was over 500 parts. With World War I aircraft, of course, the rigging. With model airplanes, especially in 1/72nd scale, it's often masking the canopies. With cars, model cars, it's pinstriping and the detail paint. Now, we're not talking about the decals. We're talking about when you're, masking it to paint it. With airplanes in general, it's masking. And with space models, it's all the gazillion tiny little details, especially if you're doing something Russian, because they got crap sticking out all over the place. And those are kind of considered the nightmarish parts of each type. And I'm sure, and with model railroads, it's the hand grabs, because they give you all a gazillion little brass. You're in there with your microscope and your tweezers trying to get those things, and then trying to get them lined up and straight and everything. Oh, figures. Figures. Eyes. With figures, it's the eyes. My wife is the master of painting the eyes. And I sometimes, sneak in there and watch her, and she's just the patience, and she's got these ultra fine tip brushes that are bloody near one hair, and but she manages to put the little glint in the eye and everything else, and it's just, oh my God. I've had her paint a couple of mine. I'm like, I can't do this. Here, she put a face on this thing. And she does it. Because she's better than I am. Because I'm a modeler. She's an artiste. Okay, I just fogged the crap out of these. Next, here we go. Use a dry napkin. Now I'm trying to read the comments. Squint. Oh, stenciling. Oh, my God. Figures do make the model. I absolutely agree. I hate to say this, but it's absolutely true. The cockpit and the figures of an airplane make the model, and if it has an exposed engine. I think in a car, the engine makes the model, if you're going to pose it with the hood open. On a train has so many external details that makes it. On a ship, of course, if it's a sailing vessel, the rigging, and if it's a later vessel, all just there's all the railing and everything. I had to do the brass railing on a White Ensign Models. What was that? It was a Knox class frigate, and just getting everything shaped and getting the glue to adhere. It was so tough to get all that done, but if you can do it without globbing the paint on, so you keep the fine definition of the brass, it looks amazing. But there's such a thin line between an amazing looking model ship or really probably any model, and especially a human face on a figure, there is such a fine line between looking convincing and looking cartoonish or even ridiculous that it's how many times have I stripped one of these things? Okay, do it again. Yeah, it's one of the reasons I think I get bummed out when a model does not come with a figure, and I know we expect that in model cars, but in model aircraft and tanks and things that don't have any figures, I agree that there's something very much lost. I think that's one of the reasons that building model drones and sometimes to a lesser extent missiles and rockets never got the following, because there's no people involved. When there's no people, there's no human connection. And I think that was very smart of a lot of the model companies that make model rockets to include a couple little guys on the ground, out there getting them ready for launch, because it humanizes the whole thing. And ultimately, we're people and we identify with a model when there's a person involved. As much as I enjoy things like the snark and the bow mark and everything, well, actually, they do come with people working on them, so I'll tell you that. But if you just, but that snark that even that little Revell snark came with it, if I remember correctly, came with two people, and I actually have that on the bench right now. I'm getting ready to repaint the base and everything. I put a base coat on it, but I found some good pictures of that model completed that I'm going to use as my guide. But I agree, when it doesn't have people, there's definitely something missing. And getting the people look good, and of course, obviously, I would say the tinier the harder, but in a way, you get a pass on teeny tiny people. No one expects a lot of detail. I would say 1/42 and 148 and 1/32 scale are where people start to expect to see some detail. And if you get bigger than that, you really better make it look lifelike. And I have seen some models that these characters, these 1/32 and 1/12 scale characters, just, they look like they're alive. I mean, this is Shepherd Payne level stuff. I don't know how they do that. It is so impressive. One thing I will say, though, is that the Tamiya, those little weathering kits that Tamiya makes with the powders you put, if you can use that to make a midnight shadow or something, looks a lot better than trying to use paint. You learn real quick in figures, paint has a lot of limitations. Yeah, 125 scale figures. I did those from Immense Miniatures, and I mean, they came out okay for my first try at it, but I'm sure someone who really knows what they're doing would look at that and go, Netsky. Although I did repaint the Tatsuya Nuvolari character because I realized he had gone gray, and I wanted to, and oh, you're getting ready on that Gork Falk. Bruce is talking about that. I've been following your videos on that build. And, that's one of the things about a lot of these ships. A lot of ship models don't come with any figures on them, including my Gato class sub. And that's sad, because I've seen one that a guy added some figures to, and it really added a lot of life to it. And John, our subjects that we model are the results of people. I agree. I agree completely. And the absence of humanity in the model detracts from it. I mean, I give you a perfect example. I don't have the picture to show you, but it's in one of the old viewers' builds. Somebody built a Gamera, the kaiju, the big flying turtle, but he has it attacking some buildings. But he put little people running out of the building, and it really fleshed out the scene. Now it went from just a big turtle smashing a building to, oh my God, all of a sudden you're in the moment. We have to, as people, we have to have something to connect with. There are a lot of things we love, but who wants to build a P-51 without a pilot? What was it Patton said near the end of the movie, George C. Scott? And the guy was talking about all the wonder weapons that didn't need soldiers or didn't need pilots. And he said, Patton laments about war without cowards and heroes, and nothing is affirmed. And although I don't like throwing people into battle unnecessarily, I understand what he's getting at, though. It's that there's a certain lack of humanity there, and I'm sure interest wanes. And I think a lot of companies that make model cars could probably do better in their sales if they were to include a driver figure. My gosh, don't you think about it? Do any of the model cars come with driver figures? I don't recall ever. I don't recall ever seeing a model truck or a model car that came with a drive. Now, military ones do, but I mean, like, civilian cars, it's always just the car. And even the Night Riders, I had to make Michael, for the diorama because, and I used one of the figures that Mark Tyler from Immense Miniatures had sent me to do that. My wife did the clay and everything to make to make his hair, because he had Michael hair. But that's an interesting. John brings up a fair point, though. I have to agree with him on that. The absence of people takes a lot away from it. The Revell 148 did have figures, but 124 and 125. Yeah, Rommel's right. I got. Okay, hold back. If I reach over there, I'm going to knock this over. Come here. Come here. Easy. Steady, lads. Steady. There's my Rommel's rod. And as he pointed out, they may be skeletons, but it does have figures. And now, the one in the box, this is the one that Orange Tabby sent me, the one that I built. The one that's in the box is not built, probably never will be, because it was personally signed by Tom Daniel for me after I did that bio on him. So this is one of my treasured kits. It stays here on my desk. And it's the one kit I don't have to dust, because the dust on it actually adds to the authenticity. But somebody a while back mentioned Rommel's rod and said that, something about zombies. I forget what the comment was, but he was kind of like, hey, if you do a zombie apocalypse, Rommel's rod would be the perfect one to convert, and they kind of would be. So, back there. I'll just slide this over here for right now. That was one of their top-selling kits, was the Rommel's rod. Although I don't think anything will ever touch the Red Baron car. Elvira had a figure, yeah. Oh gosh, who is it? The group California that. Oh come on! They run a hobby shop, big hobby shop, and they got into making models, and they bought out Mobius's stuff. Gosh, I did a bio on a background on. Gosh, Max, you're losing it, dude. Somebody remind me who it is. They make a lot of the Elvira and Frankenstein stuff, and figures now. Oh gosh, till the tip of my tongue. I'm so embarrassed. The problem with live shows. But there are a lot of figures being made. Take care, Railroad Redmond. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Sledgemaster's back. Oh gosh, I'm gonna check this out after we're done here. I'm gonna kick myself for not remembering. But they're the guys in California that bought a lot of Mobius's stuff. Pegasus, thank you. Gosh, I knew it was there. And Pegasus is making a lot of that stuff. Well, actually, the Red Baron was made in two scales, 1:24 and 1:12, and it's in my video on Tom Daniel. But if I remember correctly, what happened was the original model pattern was made in 1:12, then pantographed. And so they made the 1:24 scale as a primary seller. Monogram was looking for a way to boost the sales a couple of years later. And somebody came up with the idea, why don't we just make it in the scale of the actual pattern, not pantograph it down? And they made the 1:12 scale, which sold fairly well. I don't think that one's in production anymore. I don't even know where the molds are. But there are a lot of people that prefer that larger scale, though. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, TD in one of his promo photos actually is posing with it. Uniforms. Oh, that's not a bad idea. You guys do know that TD came up with a story for Rommel's rod, right? Because he creates these little universes for the models that he creates, and it was kind of interesting. And if I remember correctly, the story is that some SAS raided the place and stole his personal rod and went off and dumped it in the ocean or something. And after he died, his ghosts went back and found it or something like that. It was a pretty cool little story. And you think about it when you're designing something like that. It's just like when I had the Major Matt Mason for when I was writing the screenplay. When you have something like that to stimulate your imagination, write a story that goes with it, it adds a certain pop to it. Well, thanks, Bruce. I appreciate that. You take care of yourself, man. Hey, you're not dealing with kids here. Well, guys, we're at an hour and 45, so we'll be signing off here in about 10-15 minutes. Excuse me. Before I go, have you guys got anything? I think I got everything that was on my little list for our little impromptu. How is this time working out for you guys? Is this 9 o'clock at night thing, East Coast time, working out better for you? Yeah, monogram. In fact, the Panzer IV that I have on the shelf comes with 2 figures they're like people will buy the tank just to get the figures because they're useful for so many other things. Well, I hope you did well. We said the USPA Nationals. I'm not sure what that is. When I worked for USPA's United States Parachute Association back when I used to skydive in my immortal youth. Thus, these photos up on the wall. That's your glue trooper commander right there jumping out of an Army Blackhawk. Then you may have noticed the Bellywort Reserve. That was old gear. Okay, get the shine off of it. There's the altimeter on the 24-foot reserve, and then that was when I got my brand new Wonder Hog tube. Main and reserve are both on the back. Oops, come on. And now I got the cable. There we go. Just reading the comments here. Well, I appreciate that, Kevin. I'm glad he thinks so. Andy's. Man, I've been meaning to mention this, and I don't know if I did or not. I did get a couple of comments, and I think even an email or something from Andy's Hobby Headquarters in Lucas C. Guys, the Lucas C has the car channel. Andy Hobby Headquarters he does everything because he has a hobby shop. But he got that enormous delivery of model cars he picked up. And a lot of Joe Hands, a lot of rare kits. They gave me a shout out. God bless them. I appreciate that. At some point, we might get around to doing something together. We'll just see how it goes. Those guys are, bigger channels than me, and they're far more into it and everything. They're operating above my level, but I'm more than happy to do something with them at some point. And I want to thank Lucas C. and Andy both for the shout outs and mentioning the channel and just for knowing who I am. A Lindbergh B-17 stand, that I'm not sure about. Which do you prefer, flying with or without a plane? Yeah, well, an airplane does tend to make it easier. What's the build after the B-25? Okay. Oh, that brings up another point. I'm glad you asked that because the one after is going to be Cold War missilery and any kind of missile. Wing missile, ballistic missile, doesn't matter because I'm going to use the Godzilla meter. That you realize that whole build came about as kind of a lark based on what my wife asked when I showed her the bow mark. Which, oh, by the way, Ken, I mailed it to my buddy Ken who wanted to build it. He got it, so he's working on it. And she goes, how would that affect Godzilla if it hit him? Because my model Godzillas were over my shoulder at the time. So I invented the Godzilla meter, which will be how we determine the efficacy of these weapon systems. and that'll be presented on Halloween, so try to get them to me before Halloween. And you can kit bash as long as it's something that would conceivably have existed in that time. Gosh, I got to go back. Okay, it's going to be, we're doing the B-25, which is due September 27th. Halloween, the Cold War missiles. Sometime in December. What did I say next, guys? Was that the was that the car build, and then, or the airliner build, and then we're going to do the car and then a ship. And my definition of a ship is it's watercraft. So ship, boat. And I had a couple other people send me other ideas. At some point we might do some kind of kaiju thing or something. Yeah, it was the car build. Okay, so it'll be the car build. That'll be due sometime in December. That's when I'm going to do the Caterham, and probably that 1931 luxury car, that Johan kit. And I remember what I was going to ask you guys. I'm assuming that kind of ballparking 60 to 90 days is a build period for these group builds. Does that sound too much? Not enough? I mean, that seemed like enough, because I know a lot of you guys have day jobs and everything, and you only do this when you have time. I didn't want people to feel rushed. I didn't want to put any pressure on anybody. Well, Andrew, you got the right spirit. HSO model kits doesn't ring any bell. So I'm going to kind of figure 60 to 90 day window on most of our builds. Since I like the idea of everybody being able to choose what they want to build, that's why I stay kind of more with a genre. The B-25 was really more a suggestion of the viewer, so we went with a specific airplane. Probably won't. The rest of them will be a little more generic. However, at some point we might go with something specific. But I want to keep it kind of a circle, going around from subject matter to subject matter. I don't want to get stuck in one thing. And I know a lot of guys aren't Star Trek fans, and a lot of people aren't Star Wars fans, so I don't want to say, okay, you got to build an X-Wing or you got to build a Starship Enterprise. I might say you just got to build a sci-fi vehicle at some point, because sci-fi will probably be next down the road after we get to these. And whatever you guys want to make it, it's really up to you. Remember, I consider myself more the moderator of this channel than anything else. If it's not fun, what's the point in doing it? The whole idea is to have a good time. If you guys come up with something very specific you want to do, that's great. And we can always have little side builds. If somebody says, they specifically want to do something Star Wars, we can always have a little side project, whatever you guys want to do. Keep it easy. Well, remember, Shaggy Buds, that when I say airliner, I was pointing out that that's anything that carried people or cargo from point A to point B commercially. So it can be an airliner from the 30s. It can be a Zeppelin. It can be a 747 airliner. I'm not, at some point we might say specifically, okay, let's build a TWA 707, or a Convair 880 or something. But right now, and when we get around to sci-fi, I don't want to tack too many things on here. We wind up, balling the thing up. But when it comes to sci-fi, pretty much sky's the limit. Or should I say space? Literally the sky's the limit. But when I say sci-fi, that doesn't just mean ships. If you want to build sci-fi would include, I would think sci-fi would include kaiju, or, if you want to build the monster from the green slime, or the creatures from the Triffids from, it's sci-fi. Use your imagination. Build what you want to build. That's the thing is, because it's in a contest. When I get the stuff in, we'll just put a show together. I'll find some music, put together a nice display. If you want to send photos of you working on it, we can do a little build video. One thing I might do where the group builds are concerned, that's a little bit different, and it's up to you. You don't have to do this. Is put your name, what handle you want. And I might say, this build by so-and-so, whatever name you want to use, and then share that build, and then this build by so-and-so. Make it a little more individual in the group builds, because the group builds are hundreds of photos coming in from dozens and dozens of people, it's virtually impossible for me to keep them sorted. But I don't expect quite as much response from the group builds, and I figure if and if you don't want to be identified, that's fine. This will just be from Glue Trooper X, and well, I'm out of stuff to say, which is and other things you never thought you'd hear. Millennium Falcon P-25. At some point, we may have a steampunk build. Kit bash. We might have a kit bash build. Don't care what it is as long as it's not something that came straight out of the box. I'll probably weather mine a little bit because I'm making one of Doolittle's Raiders, so I try to make it look like they looked on the launch, and they were in pretty good shape. Oh yeah, we might do a spy build at some point, which includes any car, any equipment used by a spy. There's all kinds of great. It's the beauty of model building. There's so many different things to do. No, combat medic is not an easy MOS. I was in the infantry. We had combat medics with us. They had to be able to think everything we did and more. A Star Trek Pontiac GTO. Oh my God, I think I know what I'm going to do. I wrote a script called Outer Kids. I might make one of the vehicles that I concocted for that. There's all kinds of cool stuff we can do. It just says 40K Warhammer, man. That works. The J model. By the way, my dad's best friend had mentioned that flew B-25s flew the H model, if I'm not mistaken, which had the 450 calibers in the nose. They flew on any submarine patrol, and according to it was kind of a running joke where he was based that somebody saw what they thought was a sub and bombed. It turned out to be a whale, and the entire after-action report read, "Sighted whale, sank same." Well, guys, we have plenty of time to get these builds done. Enjoy yourself. I'll probably try and get a little work done on mine tomorrow. I want to get the crew members finished off so I can start gluing together. I'm still waiting for some decals to come in from Markup in Montana, but if they don't show up, I can proceed without them and use them on something else. And can never have too many instrument decals. Well, I am going to sign off. I'll leave the comments section up for a little while so that you guys can chat amongst yourselves. Hope you had a good time. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And you guys take care. And as always, model on.